And that's the whole point I'm trying to make is when you outsource, not only aren't you paying taxes anymore like you do into FICA and all the other stuff that goes along with it, not dealing with drama, but you're dealing with a specialist who only does that, does it for more hours than your team does, and is always on and you're not thinking about it. It's like your sprinkler system at home. Just turn it on. I see the future of orthodontics being as outsourced as you can outsource, with the only things that you must be doing in the office are the things that involve direct patient care. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Orthopreneurs Podcast. I'm here today, your host, Dr. Glenn Krieger, with a friend, somebody who's been on the show before. He's a returning champion. Please put your hands together and welcome J.W. Oliver. Welcome, J.W.
Hey, glad to be here. I love that. Returning champion. I feel energized already.
Yeah, I mean, you're the champion until they knock you off, man. You're the two-time returning champion. JW's become somebody who I've really gotten to know much better, somebody I respect. By the time we're done with this podcast today, we'll have a great conversation about things like how to outsource to virtual assistants, but more importantly, some red flags that may or may not matter to you that you really need to look at in terms of, you hear about fair trade all the time when it comes to coffee and other things. But when it comes to virtual assistants, you have to be, you don't have to be, but you should be concerned about such things as well. So we'll talk about that. Both JW and I share a love of watches, so we may have a little discussion about that. And maybe, just maybe, we'll teach you something about Rolex that you didn't know coming into this one, which will be fun to do. And of course, both he and I share a passion of trying to give back a little bit. So we're going to talk about some of the charitable stuff that he's doing. So JW, first, you were on the podcast earlier. We were talking about your company, ZimWorx, a year or so ago. But if you don't mind giving people a real quick, short elevator pitch about who are you and how did you end up where you are now?
Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Glenn. I mean, it was a crazy way to get here. I kind of mentioned the first time I've been in the dental space for coming on 38 years now. But I went to it was actually a Christian-based marriage conference down in Curacao. Ended up meeting a guy from Zimbabwe. This is 2015. Matter of fact, 10 years ago this month. And ended up meeting my business partner, Ken. He said, hey, we got people, we need to put them to work. And I said, I don't know how I can help you. You're in Zimbabwe. I'm in the United States. And we formed this partnership. We started off thinking, if we could put 30, 40 people to work, that would be fantastic. We could give back, help a few people get jobs. And we started looking at the remote aspect of it, because in Zimbabwe and now Zambia, they speak what we say the Queen's English, a little English accent. So it was very, very compatible for people in the U.S. to use those types of services, especially because of the language. And Glenn, here we are today. Really, we started in 2018. I always say in February of 2018, we had 9 people working for us. I've got a picture of me with 9 people. I'm thinking we're moving fast and furious. And today we're just crossing over 1,600. That's 1,600, and we're serving over 3,000 dental practices. And we also do work, and we've got a business growing in the UK, even Australia. So, yeah, it's really been a lot of fun. We call it SupportDDS or ZimWorx. ZimWorx is the corporate company, and SupportDDS is kind of how we market. But, yeah, it's just amazing to be here where we're at. And I'll say we decided when we started that we were going to give back 51% of our profits back to ministry. I always say, first 5 years, that was great. 51% of zero was zero, and that wasn't painful at all. We could write that check, and now that's a 7-figure number every year that we're giving out, and it's just amazing. And we're proud to be where we're at, and proud to be able to sponsor initiatives that really make a global impact too.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about how people utilize your system. So where are some examples where, say, a dentist or orthodontist would use your product?
Yeah, I would say the most common is at the front desk. Same with orthodontics offices as it is in GPs. They're just busy. They're greeting the patients as they come in. They're trying to get people to come out. They're doing the accounting. They're answering the phone. And if we can take that phone aspect out of an office, which we do that for hundreds of practices, if not thousands, where we're actually saying, look, let's have these inbound calls, especially new patient calls. Let's have them go to a person that's in our offices that can answer the phone, actually book right into your practice management software, make the appointment, answer basic questions, and that's the majority of the calls, right? And we've got white paper concepts, and we've got proof that says we actually do that better than most offices. because they're dedicated to that task. So the front desk is a big one. Any type of insurance work that needs to be done, any type of follow up, resubmittal of claims. We do a lot in the revenue cycle management. And then what's really grown is just accounting. People needing, whether it be a bookkeeper or an accounting or finance manager, all the way up to a controller level, which in their area is called a chartered accountant, very similar to a CPA, who's actually managing their finances at a high level. So, and then even IT. But if you can kind of dream it, it works. Patient recare, recall, not so much in your side, but in ortho, but inactive patients or maybe people who unscheduled treatment, they just never have called back. Maybe it was a financing issue. So really any of that is where we can fill a void.
Yeah, it's real interesting to me. You said a couple of things there that I want to circle back to a little bit. First of all, front desk. I went into one of my referring dentist's offices a couple of months ago, and I was just dropping off some goodies as we typically will do. And at the office was an iPad. It was in front, right there when you walked in. And as I walked through the front door, a woman appeared on and goes, "Hi, how can I help you?" I said, "Whoa." I was like, the doctor came running out because, he knew who I
You were
was.
there. Yeah.
But while I was talking to him, his patients walked in the front door, said hello to the woman on the iPad. She checked them in. She said, "Great, take a seat. I'll let the team know you're here." No different than having a front desk person working there, if not even better, because she could communicate with anybody at any given moment without being drawn to anything else. And I was blown away by how he was using this technology. And I think one of the biggest challenges right now is that people out there are listening, go, "I would never do that." And then I would challenge them, "Why wouldn't you?" Like, "Oh, my patients would never go for that." Really? How are you so sure your patients wouldn't go for it? Because this was a pretty high-end practice. And
Yeah.
I think, would you agree that people underestimate severely what their patients would put up with?
Yeah, look, Glenn, that's a massive piece. Just the misconception of how they think. We get a lot about the voice. Ours do have again, it sounds like you could talk to somebody in London, but I think if you have somebody with a cool accent, especially from London, they're very intrigued. Like, "Oh, this is so cool. Where are you originally from?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm from Zimbabwe or Zambia." "Oh, that's great." They don't even know they don't work there. But I think
Right.
that. Look, we all do that, right? To some extent, we get stuck into a mindset that this is the way it is, this is the way it's always going to be, and nothing really changes. So I think it's become more common now that people are using virtual remote teams or using the whole what we call insourcing, outsourcing model. But yeah, you're right. We had a client in San Francisco. They put up a 36-inch screen right on their front desk, and one of our teams in Africa was greeting when they came in. "Oh, hi, how you doing? Okay, have you filled out the online form? Oh, let me text that to you if you haven't filled it out yet. And okay, the doctor will be right with you." And they realized, "Oh wow, we didn't need anybody to actually greet the people as they came in," and it works fantastic. But it takes a different mindset for sure.
It does. And I just posted an Entrepreneurs recently about the fact that I feel, and people will have every right to disagree, obviously. I feel that the greatest existential threat to orthodontic practice in general is going to be the workforce, the labor force. It's not going to get easier. The economy right now, by most accounts, people would not say the economy is killing it. People say the
Yeah.
economy is doing okay. We're not sure where it's headed. There's some uncertainty, right? One economic report says this, another economic report says that. Nobody's saying we're going into a recession or depression. My point is, when the economy really gets humming, like when it really gets all the gears going, do people out there think it's going to be easier to get people to work in their office or tougher? It's going to be tougher. And so, someone I know said, and I respect, said they see the biggest existential threat is people shunning the technology that's available to help them mitigate a lot of these problems. And for everybody out there listening, I'm telling you, start opening your eyes to some of the possibilities of what's out there. And you'd be surprised about how much you could literally outsource. You said something else, JW, that I wanted to follow up on too, which is that you do it better than we can do it in our office. And that's 100% true. When you have somebody working our front desk for us, answering the phone, I think I'd love you to just take a second and explain the big difference, because I have remote response, right? We do dashboard monitoring. We monitor people's dashboards. You and I have talked about this.
Yep.
For their dental monitoring, we monitor it seamlessly within their dashboard. And we know for a fact, based on the metrics, that we do it far better than they ever can. Because I want you to explain to people, what's the difference between me hiring an employee in my office and managing them versus outsourcing to a professional company? that only does it. I'll let you say it because I've said it till I'm blue in the face and nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah, that can go so deep. I mean, first thing I would say is attrition. People quitting and leaving your office. That can be a revolving door at the front. We operate on a 0.52% a month. That's a 0.5% a month, or a little over 6% a year. So number one, you have that. Number two, people in the front office typically get stressed, right? They're dealing with a lot of things. They're dealing with the patients coming in. They're dealing with the phone ringing. They're dealing with patients leaving. Maybe they're dealing with some accounting issues. And so you're going to find that you and I both might be the same way. If we're overwhelmed, our attitude may not be as good. But when you extract all that and you put it with someone who is trained to do that particular role, they know all the scripts, they know the processes, they know the SOPs, they know your software, they can 100% do it better, more efficiently. And you're also not going to miss those phone calls. We've talked about that tons. Just missing a phone call can cost you thousands of dollars by not being able to pick up the phone. So take that 40% missed calls down to 8%. And that in it, look, Glenn, that in itself, you're right. I talk about blue in the face. We just talk about just focus on missed calls. If you would just reduce your missed calls by 20%, what's the ROI on that? And it's unbelievable. But people just don't buy into it. And again, I just think we do it better. Now, the one, we may get into some of this, but one of those misconceptions too is you're going to hire somebody and day one or maybe day two, they're 100% on board and they're just killing it.
Right.
It's a 90-day process, just like if you hire somebody at your front desk. They got to be trained. They got to learn the scripts. They got to learn who you are. We want them integrated into our clients' culture. We want them to wear your shirt. We want them to have your logos on. We want all that for your team members. So it's important that they understand that's a big, big piece of it.
How many hours a day could I have them answering my phone if I wanted, JW?
Well, we've got some people who want to have their phone answered from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we're having, maybe two people covering that. We typically, I would say 96% of our clients actually work on their time zone. So you being there in Texas, they would be working 8 to 5. You could tweak that to be 7 to 4 or 9 to 6 if you wanted to. But you can also look, there's an enormous amount of people that really would like to call between 5 and 7. They're off work. Right. They thought about it. They need to schedule. But, as you know, most offices are closed by then. So right. I think it gives you a lot of options for taking care of those things too.
And if I wanted to pay accordingly, I could have 24/7.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got some emergency clinics that do just that.
And that's my point is, like, for remote response, we do 24/7 monitoring because we've got an international group of people doing it, and they do it better. And again, the point I was getting at is, when you outsource, it's the same as an orthodontic specialist looking at the way they do things. You're a specialist. It's all you do. And so you do it better. And so I guarantee you, folks, your team members are getting pulled away for a variety of reasons. JWs are not. When you outsource, I'll just throw out some names. Like, I don't want to throw out names. I'm going to keep that. I was going to do that. And I'm going to change my mind. My point, though, is, when was the last time you told the doctor's office, sorry, guys, we're not going to be able to answer the phone today because we're short-staffed? Probably never.
Yeah,
never.
Happened, yeah.
When was the last time you said, well, someone's not feeling well today, they went home early? Never. When was the last time someone went on maternity and the office couldn't get phone calls answered? Never. That's the point, is when you deal with a professional company, you're treated like a professional. And so you're on. It's like flipping a switch and, like Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. Right? And that's the whole point I'm trying to make, is when you outsource, not only aren't you paying taxes anymore like you do into FICA and all the other stuff that goes along with it, not dealing with drama, but you're dealing with a specialist who only does that, does it for more hours than your team does, and is always on, and you're not thinking about it. It's like your sprinkler system at home. Just turn it on, let it do its job, turn it off. It's that simple. So I think that you said that earlier, and I think it's very important for people to understand that I see the future of orthodontics being as outsourced as you can outsource, with the only things that you must be doing in the office are the things that involve direct patient care. And that if I were to build my office again right now from scratch, it would be less than 1,000 square feet. There would be a virtual person answering all patients who walk through the door. I would have everything outsourced with every drop of technology I could possibly get my hands on, and charge fairly for my services. And I would have lower stress, lower drama, never have to worry about snow days, never have to worry about all the other stuff that goes along, and maybe have a couple of assistants. And I know you'll be at Summit. This might air after Summit, JW, but at Summit, Bob Skopek is talking there. He reduced his team from like 15 people to 3 and
Wow.
produces more, all by leveraging technology, exactly what you do. So sorry for the long diatribe there, but because of remote response, because of what you do, I do think people need to embrace this a lot more. And since we're on that topic, let's dive into something that the dirty little secret of outsourcing or virtual assistants, because there's a couple of kinds of virtual assistants you can get. The first kind, and I've had them on the show, are people who say, look, I need a higher functioning assistant. I want somebody for the United States. I've got somebody out in California who's been on the podcast, and you find out what you want. Maybe it's a marketing director. Maybe it's somebody who's going to help you with travel. Maybe it's somebody who's going to do the same stuff you can do, but somebody just wants somebody from the US for whatever
Yep.
reason. She'll find you 3 qualified candidates, interview all, she'll find a bunch, interview them down to 3. Then you get to talk to all 3 of them, decide which one you want, and bring them in. And in those cases, there's not a lot to discuss. You're getting somebody who's getting a very nice hourly rate, probably somewhere between $25 and $35, $40 an hour, and go about their business for many hours a week you want. In your case, whether it's Philippines, Costa Rica, Zimbabwe, Zambia, wherever you're talking about, if I get a virtual assistant through any number of different places, the way that virtual assistant is being compensated and treated and the way they're working could be radically different. And I think it's very important for people to know that, because as remote response has grown, we started with one group that we didn't really realize how they do things. And I'll let you tell the story about how you do things, and then I'll jump in a little bit and tell you what I've learned, because I do think people need to be careful about how they go about doing this.
Yeah, look, there's always a cheaper way. It doesn't mean it's a better way, right? I think if you could say I found something that's more price conscious and it still meets my needs, that's one thing. But you're so right about that. Number one, we do allow our clients to interview, so we'll present them with 2 or 3 candidates. They can pick who seems like to be the best fit for their office. So they get to meet them. They know who's going to be there. And it's going to be the same person each day. And then, as you mentioned, when they're out sick, if they're going to go on maternity, we have people that can backfill for those times as well. But what's real important, and a lot of people will just go on Upwork, or they'll go out to one of these, findmyva.com or whatever it is, and they'll find somebody. And they could be from Colombia, the Philippines, Belize, they're from all over. And what they're doing is they're kind of connecting you with some way. And they'll always advertise it to be, oh, yeah, it's only going to be $7 an hour. And you're like, oh, $7 an hour. That's fantastic. But there's so many anomalies that go with that, especially if you're dealing with the medical dental community. Number one, your first question should be, what about cybersecurity? What about my HIPAA protection? What about the PHI? How is that being handled? Do I have that confidence in doing that? For instance, for us, everybody comes to our offices. Nobody works from home. We use Black Talon Security to monitor all of our computers, every one of them, 1,600 plus remotely. They go through a training through Abide to get their compliance testing for HIPAA. And then the other things that come with that, just think about if they're working from home. It sounds good, $7 an hour. I'll use that as an example. But do they have a good computer? Do they have good internet? Are there dogs barking and chickens crowing and babies crying in the background? All of those things are real important when you're looking at comparing the cost. So if it's a task that you say, I don't really care, they're doing a back end work and they do it at their own leisure, if their power's out, I don't care, it might be okay. I never want to say it's not going to work. But before you do that, I think you want to know, number one, what's the infrastructure? Find out, how do they have a computer? Do they have good internet? Do they have a good computer? What happens if that computer goes bad? Are you going to need to send them $500 to replace their computer because it could be something they couldn't afford? And then the other thing is working conditions. That's something we pride ourselves on. I actually posted on LinkedIn today. We call it the Grind Coffee Shop. We have these in all of our locations. We just added our one in Zambia. It's a high end Starbucks. Our team can go down there and get a cup of coffee. They can take a break. We serve muffins and chips and all kinds of things that they can have in our break room. We have a workplace wellness team that's run by 14 of our workplace wellness advocates. Most of them come from a pastoral background. They're there to help them when they're going through emotional, physical, marital issues, depression. They can be there counseling. We have a CFO, believe it or not, it's a chief fun officer. who is there just to help them on weekends. We do hikes and things during the week. We got games during the week. So ours we see as a more holistic view, that we are taking care of your team members so that they can give you better service and provide for you better. So I'm sorry that was long
No,
as
it's
well,
great.
but I wanted that to be understood about the differences in how that works too.
Yeah, if someone's looking to use a virtual assistant for your business, it's important for you to ask the questions of how much is the company making, right? Because we found out when we first started remote response working with Philippine virtual assistants, right? We train them from scratch. They're not on the phone with anybody, so they do great through the dashboard. People never know because they've been trained so well. And so when they came to us and asked for a raise, right? They come to us for the raise. Said, sure, happy to give you a raise. You're doing great work. And so, how much you want to make an hour? And they told us. We said, great. Well, I'm going to make up numbers now, JW, just to keep things simple.
Yeah.
But they came to us and said, I want $10 an hour, let's just say. And right now they're making $7 an hour. So you say, great. I mean, $3 is a lot of money, but you've worked hard. We'll give you a $3 raise or $2 raise, whatever it is. Come to find out that they want $10, you're giving seven or whatever the number is. You find out that the company that's charging you $7 for the employee is really taking 4.5 of it. And these people are making $2.5 to $3 an hour. And so if people out there listening are okay with that the person that they're using for their front desk or their phone, and you might just simply say, well, I don't care. That's their problem, not mine. Well, that's great. You can have that approach. I'm not going to judge you. For me, once we found that out, we started, and you know this, JW, we had a long conversation about this
Yep.
privately.
Yep.
We started looking for alternatives of ways that would still fit within our pricing model that allowed us the opportunity to take these people and literally buy out their contracts, right? And now we became the employer of record. But as you know, in a third party in a country like the Philippines, not a third world, but where we're now the third party hiring these people, the rules change. You got to pay them for a 13th month. There's holidays you're not aware of. There's all these things you learn about. So I've learned the hard way that doing the right thing can sometimes be challenging. And if you folks are looking to hire and not see someone get taken advantage of on the other end, a company like JW's is a great way to know that these people they're going to a building with proper internet and a proper computer, and they're wearing your logo and they're doing your office work. If that matters to you and staying within the cost, that's huge. And I would ask that question of any company that's going to hire out a virtual assistant for you. How are they being compensated? If you're paying them $13 an hour, $12 an hour, $9 an hour, how much of that money is going to the employee versus how much is, because if they're making $15 an hour and the employee's making $4, how are you going to feel about that? You guys going to feel good? I know I wouldn't. So again, JW, sorry for putting you on the spot with that one, because people now are going to start asking you that question. But at the end of the day, I know what kind of person you are, and I know what you're doing, and I know that everybody who works for you is being taken care of. And I think that's important. So
Yeah, I would add to that. I think it's important to understand, and that's one of the reasons people can even hire somebody direct at home and pay them $5 or $6 an hour. You're not paying for all the infrastructure, right? For instance, I share this many times. Our monthly internet cost, just for our internet cost, is about $45,000 just in Zimbabwe, and that's just to have the internet coming in, three different trunks that come in, so we got redundancy, et cetera, or your utility bills, or we provide so this is a big thing. We provide all of our team members with full Medicare benefits, or Medicaid benefits, they call it, medical care, medical aid, and that's expensive. We're spending about $45 to $50 per person on our side for that. You're right. People don't think about the holidays. We absorb them within our costs. For instance, we pay about 21 holidays a year where they come into work because it's a different country holiday. They come into work, but we're paying them double time for that day. We have to factor that into our cost as well. But if you're treating people right, Glenn, then they're going to stay. And I think that's why you see our attrition rate is so low. If you're treating people right, we still get between 600 and 700 applications or CVs or resumes for every one role that we have available. So our team spends an enormous amount of time going through that, and that's because of the culture we've been built there, and that's becoming kind of a push. So you're 100% right. You need to understand that model of how your team members are being treated, how they're being compensated. Do they get holidays? Is there medical aid pay? all of that contributes to this low attrition rate, which is super, super important for your team
Agreed.
member.
Agreed. And you've already talked about the 51% going towards charitable donations, and that's huge. And that's a great segue because I think we can move into watches a little bit. For most people listening, orthodontists, either they have a spouse or somebody in their family who likes watches, or maybe they've thought about learning more about watches. And I know I'll open myself up as a resource, and I can always connect you to JW. If anybody's ever looking to talk watches, it's something I do as a side hustle. I find watches and sell them and have fun with it. My day job's okay, folks. It's just I like going. I like finding the deals. They're fun to
Same
find.
way. Same way.
Yeah, I mean, just chasing down the deals and finding a $10,000 watch for $7,000 or $5,000 or less, and then finding it a new home. But folks, you've heard the term Rolex, right? As JW and I were talking beforehand, did you folks know that Rolex is a nonprofit corporation, right? Right, JW?
That's correct. Yep. Nonprofit.
And when I say that to people, they go, yeah, that's just so that the managers and the people can make all this money for free. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. We know we were talking beforehand. Do you want to tell people real quick, how did the name Rolex come about? And what do you know about the Rolex as a company, which might surprise people a little bit here?
Well, the founder, Hans Wildorf, was actually grew up in an orphanage, and he fell in love with watches and wanted to build a watch brand. What was the most interesting thing I found out was Rolex. People are always trying to, what was the guy's name? Roland, or was his last name Rollet? Or they're coming up with all
Named
these.
it after his ex-wife, Rolanda,
Yeah,
right? Rolex.
Rolanda, or yeah. And Wildorf said he was just on he was riding around and he came up with the name. He thought, Rolex. That sounds like luxury, and it just rolls off the tongue, which it does, Rolex. And so, yeah, people always think there's something behind it. Is interesting, but yeah, the reason he did the foundation, set it up as a nonprofit or a foundation is he wanted he didn't have any family, he didn't have kids, so he had nobody to hand it off to, and didn't have any known brothers and sisters, from what I understand. So yeah, he wanted to set up in a foundation where he could continue to give back, and he does. And you're right. People always say, "Oh, they hide the profits," but I don't think that was the intention. The intention was to let it continue in perpetuity, and also be able to contribute back to orphanages and other good causes. So it's closely held, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, from what I understand, the vast majority of the money goes to orphanages in Europe, from what I was told. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it is, in fact, a nonprofit corporation, people. And it's not as a tax loophole. It's not to make it. It's simply because he wanted to give back, which most people don't know. And I think what people don't also know is that I was once told by a watch repair person that piece for piece, Rolex is the most indestructible watch on the market. People know it as being very status symbol, what have you. But it's actually one of the most indestructible watches you can buy, for what it's worth, if people didn't know that. Out here, we call them Texas Timexes. For the oil and gas gentlemen.
Yeah.
But I know for a lot of people out there, you and I were joking about watches beforehand, talking about some watches that are $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 watches. For some people listening right now, they can't wrap their head around that, right? And they may have the means. They might live in a $3 million house or a $2 million house. They might drive a $150,000 car, but they can't seem to wrap their head around why would anybody ever spend $50,000 on a watch. I know I mean, I don't own personally a $50,000, although technically I do have one in my possession that I'm going to end up selling. But I have reasons why I like the idea of watches. What are yours? Why do you like wearing an automatic timepiece, which by definition is less accurate than a $49 quartz watch?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a couple of things interesting. I got my first Rolex in 1991. I still have it. I was telling you, I recently gave it to my son for his 30th birthday. It was kind of a cool thing, and it's worth about 5 times what I paid for it. Uh, there was a period of probably 15 years where I didn't wear anything kind of watches. I've got a Garmin, that I use for triathlons, and I've kept it, and I wore it, and I was wearing it every day. And a few years back, I was like, I really like those watches. And to me, it's not status. I don't wear anything for status. I believe it's understanding in horology, as they call it, that the complications and the work that goes into build these timepieces. You and I mentioned I bought a watch called a Breguet, and I actually watched a YouTube video for I think it was about 18 minutes long about the building of it and what it takes to make the face of it. It's actually gold, and they've got a machine that called a row machine, ROW, and it goes in and makes all these rows on the face. Just fascinated by the and that's what they call them, complications typically, of how
Right.
complicated they are. And that's why they make watches that are open faced on the back, so you can see the complications in motion and in movement. So yeah, I would say I'm just really more fascinated by the complexity and the beauty of them. And you're right. I use a winder. Most of mine stay pretty accurate, but those watches, some of them don't keep great time, right? You look up and a month later and they're 5 minutes off, and you're like, okay, I probably need to get this put on a timer and get it adjusted. But I think it's just the beauty of them, the craftsmanship by most of them, and how well made they are. And look, they've been around doing this a long time, so I don't think it's going away. And I'm just kind of fascinated by the whole process.
Yeah, to me, it's truly amazing. I mean, just what he's talking about complications, right? If you've got a watch that tells time, that's great. If you have a watch that tells time and date, that's another complication. If you've got a watch that tells time, date, and day of the week, that's another complication. We take for granted with quartz, it just happens. With a watch, the watchmaker has to build in separate springs, separate mechanisms, right? Moon phase, right? If you look like at a Patek Philippe moon phase, day, date, what phase of the moon is, or a world timer, and we won't even get into tourbillons right now. I've been told a Patek Philippe can take up to 6 years to build. 6 years to build one watch. And so for me, like you, I love the craftsmanship. I love the fact that some of the companies have been around 300 years, 400 years. And in the most simplistic way, it's men's. And I don't mean to sound chauvinistic here, because women can wear watches too. I just don't know many women who are really into horology. There are
Correct.
some, right? But the overwhelming majority of people I've met on this journey, where I talk about, here's a $10,000 watch, here's a $50,000, here's a $4,000 watch, are men. There are some women, right? I'm not saying they don't exist, but the overwhelming majority are men. Why? Because for me, this is my jewelry, right? My wife, for a birthday, you were talking about your 60th birthday. Your wife said, you've really been looking at this watch forever. You should get this watch. Whereas for my wife, it might be a diamond. It might be a sapphire. It might be some sort of beautiful piece of jewelry she's been looking at she doesn't care about a watch. We bought her one watch her whole life. It sits in the drawer,
Yeah.
generally unworn. But for me, this is jewelry. And I love the fact that on my wrist is something that a craftsman built that took years, potentially. And like you said, taken care of properly. This will go to my son or my daughters. This will go to their children. And potentially in 50 or 100 years, these watches will be in circulation on people we love. And I think that's a really strong thing. And again, if anybody ever wants to have the horology conversation with me, whether you never got a watch or you're looking to buy the FP Journe $250,000 watch, it's always fun to just sit and talk watches. And because there are so many brands out there of different type styles and what have you, and they all have their little idiosyncrasies, right? I have to ask you, what is your favorite watch, whether you own it or not? Any watch on planet Earth, if you could have any watch, what would it be?
Wow, that's a really tough question. You're right. I was sitting here fiddling with my wedding ring, and I'm thinking that this jewelry and my watch is all that I really have. My wife has one Rolex watch I bought her years ago. It sets on the timer. She never puts it on, but she never takes off her Cartier bracelet because she's not going to do without that one, right? So it's crazy. You're right. It was funny. You were just spawning that in me, like my wife cares nothing about watches. But if I was going to pick my favorite one, I would probably just have to say the Breguet Horamundi, which I just bought for my
Beautiful.
60th birthday. Yeah, and I'd been looking at it for 5 years, and I just was like, couldn't pull the trigger because it felt like I was buying a couple of cars. But I finally found the right one, pre-owned, and pulled the trigger on it, and I couldn't be happier. But there's so many beautiful. Rolex sets the standard, though. It really does. I mean, you can go all over the place, and there's people that argue with that, but I would just argue that Rolex holds their values, sets the standard, and they're durable and they're elegant. So I think that's what makes me kind of go back to them too.
I got to tell you, Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, simplistic,
Oh,
easy, and it's just I
beautiful
love the
too.
They're so thin, and I mean, they're just gorgeous watches. But by the way, you did touch on one thing I will add to here before we run out of time. People don't. I made a post in Orthopreneurs. I said, "Oh, what's your side hustle?" And it was really interesting, JW. People who own ortho practices, everything from coffee roasting, like commercial coffee roasting, to
Wow.
owning crumble cookie stores, to owning bagel stores, to commercial real estate. I mean, any number of things were interesting. And I said, mine is, buying and selling watches for people. And I enjoyed it. I said, never pay retail again. But I forgot that in my statement, all of a sudden people started inundating me. You can get a Rolex cheaper than retail. I'm like, okay, there's two kinds of watches out there, folks. There's watches that trade normally, like you could take a Hublot, IWC, Tag Heuer, Breitling. We can name any number of watches that you can. If the MSRP on them is $10,000, once they've been worn and used, you could probably get a perfect condition watch for 5 or 6, 50, 60, 70% of
Yeah.
MSRP in
Agreed.
perfect condition with box and papers. But you ain't going to get a Rolex, a $10,000 Rolex, the next day once it leaves the store for $10,000. Because you know the reasons for that, JW, before I put you on the spot?
Well, yeah. I mean, they've created such a wait list, if you will, of VIP customers that they're going to those VIP. And you probably know this too. There's a whole bunch of watches that they don't even have on the market that are completely high end. They're not in their catalog. They're not in their books,
No.
but they're in the back of the store, and they only sell those to their really, really high VIP clients. So it's very difficult.
Yeah. So if someone goes in, they're called market watches. I think, Rolex would be one. I mentioned FP Journe was another. Patek is probably another.
Patek for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of watches where they keep the supply so small that the secondary market literally could be 3 times the price. There are Rolexes out there that sold for $20,000 that now are 80, 90, $100,000 because you just can't get them. And so, for those of you out there looking not to get retail, I can promise you, if I can find you a Rolex, it won't be at retail. It'll probably be
Amen.
double retail, but it'll be less expensive than you probably find it anywhere else. But
You're better
remember,
off buying a new one if you can find it, but
if
that's
you can
probably
find it.
not happening. Yeah,
And
yeah.
the best way to find it, as JW and I have talked about the last few days, is go into a Rolex store and just start buying Rolexes and buy the ones you can get. And then after your third or fourth or fifth, then they'll,
100%.
then they'll let you go buy the ones that you don't see on display. It's just, and right now, JW, there are people out there shaking their heads at us going, these people are
They're
bananas.
crazy. They're
They are.
bananas. Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and,
And we may be a little bit.
And I just say back to them, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't own a bunch of Rolexes. For me, horology is something I really enjoy. I love, like I said, I just got a watch today. I showed JW beforehand. It's an Audemars Piguet. It's beautiful. I got it at a pretty good price. I'm going to end up selling it online. But to hold it in my hands and feel the movement and the weight
Mm,
on it, oh my
yeah.
gosh. And the Hublot Big Bang gold that I have is just so beautiful to look at it. It really is. It's made in conjunction with an artist. And it's only 200 of them made in the world. There's something special about that. To hold it in my hand is wonderful. But I would say everybody listening out there right now, you've got your something. It may not be a watch, it may not be a car, but there's something in your life that you love the craftsmanship of. And if there isn't, I encourage you to go find what that thing is. Uh,
Find a passion.
I
Yeah,
just
find
have
a
a
passion.
passion. So, and that's one thing, JW, I love about you, that as we wrap this up, the one thing you and I have in common is we just have passion for everything we do. You're one of the few people I've met who's more intense, more passionate, more well-rounded, more eclectic in what he's doing than anything I'll ever hope to do. And when I grow up, I want to be JW Oliver. I'm saying that now.
Well, you got time. I'm way older, so you got time.
Yeah, I know you beat me by like 2.5 years. So I
Yeah,
better get on it because I only got 2.5 years to catch up. But
absolutely.
if someone wants to learn more about ZimWorx, how do they find out? What do they do?
Yeah. For if you're on the dental side, go to supportdds.com. That's supportdds.com. You can also go to ZimWorx. That's with an X. So it's ZIMWORX.com. And I encourage just go in and schedule a discovery call. Takes about 20, 30 minutes. We can tell you about the process. If you like it, move forward. If you don't, no harm, no foul. We love talking to people. We love explaining what we do. We're passionate about it. and we love to talk about it too.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here today, JW. And next time I have you on the show, we have to make sure we schedule you again with wind chimes directly above your head so we can listen to them the entire time.
I know,
For
and
those of
I
you
was hoping, I
listening,
was
that's
like,
what you're hearing.
I tried to turn them down, but I couldn't turn them down. So I'm actually in Kona, Hawaii, doing a 10-day water juice fast, and so I just I couldn't get it down. This is the only place I could find to do this podcast. So yeah, a little odd. I'll take the wind chime down. It added a little bit of a flair to it, though.
At first I was so stupid. I wasn't even looking over your head. I'm like, where is that a ringtone? What's going on with his phone? And then I look over his head. I'm like, oh, it's a wind chime. Well, thank you, JW, for being here. Looking forward to seeing you soon, my friend.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Glenn. Great to see you, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.